In February 1959, 9 experienced hikers walked into the Ural Mountains, and only 8 of them would ever be seen again as anyone recognized. When search teams finally found their camp weeks later, the tent wasn't just abandoned, it was sliced open from the inside. Not one hiker had stopped to put on their boots. Some ran into temperatures of -30 degrees wearing nothing but socks. 2 of the bodies had crushed ribs and skull fractures, the kind of damage usually seen in a car crash, but there wasn't a single external wound on their skin. One woman was missing her tongue, and parts of their clothing later tested positive for radiation. The Soviet government investigated, then abruptly closed the case, blaming it on something they only ever called a compelling unknown force. 65 years later, nobody has ever fully explained what happened on that mountain the night these 9 people died. This is the story of the Dyatlov Pass Incident. The group was led by Igor Dyatlov, a 23-year-old engineering student known for his careful planning. He'd assembled a team of experienced skiers and hikers from the Ural Polytechnic Institute, 7 men and 2 women, most in their early 20s. Their goal was to reach Otterton Mountain, earning the highest hiking certification available in the Soviet Union at the time. They were not reckless amateurs. These were skilled outdoorsmen, well prepared for the brutal Ural winter. On January 27th, they set out into terrain that few people ever entered, all carefully recorded in the group's shared journal and the personal diaries several members kept along the way. One member, Ural, turned back early due to illness, a decision that would save his life. The remaining 8 men and 1 woman continued on. It would be the last anyone saw of them alive. Before we go further, it's worth pausing on who these 9 people actually were, because it's easy to reduce them to a mystery and forget they were real young people with real lives ahead of them. Igor Dyatlov himself was already a rising talent in radio engineering, having built his own radio receiver as a teenager. Zinaida Kolmogorova was known among her friends for her endless optimism, keeping the group's spirits up even in brutal cold. Lyudmila Dubinina, one of the 2 women on the trip, was a passionate economics student who had survived a serious injury on a previous expedition just months earlier, yet insisted on joining this one anyway. Several of the men were close friends who had hiked together for years, trusting each other completely with their lives in terrain like this. When the group failed to send their expected telegram confirming a safe return, search parties were dispatched. What they found on February 26th was the group's tent, still standing, half collapsed under snow, on the slope of a mountain the local Mansi people called Kholat Shyakul. Translated, it means Mountain of the Dead. Inside, they found supplies, food, and warm clothing, untouched. But the tent had been sliced open from the inside, not the outside. Something had made these experienced hikers claw their way out of their own shelter into temperatures of nearly -30 degrees Celsius, rather than take the time to unzip the entrance. Footprints, some in only socks, one hiker even barefoot, led away from the tent toward the tree line over a kilometer away. The search led to a large cedar tree at the forest's edge. The tree's branches were broken up to 5 meters high, as if someone had desperately tried to climb for a better view or to escape something on the ground. Nearby, a small fire pit suggested an attempt to survive the cold. As investigators worked through the following weeks, the case grew stranger. Medical examinations revealed severe internal injuries on several of the hikers, the kind of blunt force trauma typically seen in a serious car crash. Yet there were no external wounds, no signs of a struggle with another person. Some of the recovered clothing later tested positive for elevated levels of radioactive contamination. The official Soviet investigation closed the case in 1959, attributing the deaths to a compelling natural force, a deliberately vague conclusion that satisfied no one, least of all the victims' families. In the absence of a clear answer, theories have multiplied for over 6 decades. Some point to an avalanche, though the tense location and the pattern of injuries don't perfectly match typical avalanche trauma. Others suggest a secret Soviet military weapons test in the area, pointing to the radiation traces and the government's swift, secretive handling of the case. A more recent and scientifically grounded theory, published by researchers using modern avalanche modeling in 2021, suggests a rare type of delayed slab avalanche could explain the tent collapse and the internal injuries. Though critics note it still doesn't explain every detail investigators recorded. Still others point to infrasound, a phenomenon where wind moving over the mountain's specific rock formation can generate an inaudible low-frequency vibration known to cause intense panic and disorientation in humans, potentially explaining why 9 rational, experienced hikers would flee their shelter without dressing for the cold. More than 60 years later, the Dyatlov Pass incident hasn't faded. If anything, interest has only grown. Russian authorities reopened parts of the investigation in 2019, driven largely by public pressure and decades of unanswered questions, ultimately reaffirming the avalanche theory as the most likely official explanation. But for many researchers and family members, that conclusion still leaves too many details unaddressed. The case has since inspired documentaries, books, and even a Hollywood film, and every winter, dedicated hikers and researchers still trek out to Kholat themselves, drawn by the same question that has haunted investigators since 1959. What exactly happened on that mountain in the dark in the final hours these 9 people were alive? What we know for certain is this: 9 capable, careful young people went into those mountains, and something happened that night that made them choose the freezing dark over their own tent. Whether it was nature, human error, secrecy, or something science still can't fully name, the mountain the Mansi people called "Don't Go There" keeps its answer to itself. If this story pulled you in the way it's pulled in millions of others for over 60 years, subscribe, because there are more unsolved mysteries like this one waiting to be told. And tell me in the comments, which theory do you believe?